The inclusion into the hierarchy requires total devotion. How, then, can one be affirmed in the chain of hierarchy? Only by complete assimilation of the plan of the lords. The higher instructions must be fulfilled to the smallest detail. Strive to fulfill the smallest instructions of the teacher. This is the only way to victory. That means fully, unconditionally, and without the least qualification. Devotion is of value only when it is manifested in the fullest measure possible, to such an extent that man cannot manifest it more strongly. Each half measure in devotion must be attributed to the field of evil. Half measures are inadmissible. The worst of all is half-measured thinking and half-measured striving. Halfness shown by the disciples throws them back a millennium. This is especially true for the one who has decided to follow the spiritual path. He must not allow any deviation of his daily practice from the chosen ideal. It is most pernicious when halfness insinuates itself into one who is affirming himself upon the path, because then there results a conflict between thoughts and actions. Without wholeness there can be no construction. Hence, the disciples must understand how important it is to have complete striving. Higher instructions must be carried out, either completely or not at all. Otherwise, they miss their purpose. If you are given a piece of cloth sufficient for only one garment, you will not be able to make a complete garment out of just half of it. Similarly, if you accept only half the advice you are given, you will not achieve a full result. People like to extract a part of given advice and afterward complain about their unfulfilled expectations. Wise advice is a medicine whose formula cannot be changed. He who, depending upon how it pleases him, partly follows and partly dissents, is in truth disobedient and causes only damage. A half-fulfilled instruction is like a house without a roof, or a half dose of a salutary medicine. Either may bring harm or death. The false friends are picking out of the law only those parts which are agreeable to them, because of the other parts which they reject, they are, in fact, apostates. When they are told that sacrifice is the first key to this knowledge, they begin to seek for some personal cause for the suggestion in the mind of the one who has given them the knowledge of that key. If they are told that personal purity is a requisite, they begin to search for some way of minimizing the necessary degree, or finding some method of indulgence which will modify the severity of the demand and still permit them to retain their standing. If they are shown their duty toward those who are pointing the way, they lose no time in trying to see how far they can go in an opposite direction without jeopardizing their chances of success, or in finding some excuse of a personal nature which will justify their recreancy. If you are unable to accomplish this obedience, rather you should not start with this spiritual path at all, because otherwise you run the risk of committing treason. People hypocritically repeat the words of the teaching and at the same time think without shame about inadmissible actions. The instructions that are sent can only be applied to life in full measure. Therefore, we advise you either to approach with full devotion or not at all. Such an obedience is a difficult task. Unfortunately, usually only a small fraction of the instructions is being carried out. Let everyone think and recollect how many instructions were not absorbed, how many were fulfilled only partially, and how many precious advices and hints were not applied at all. But usually a disciple does not see and does not fulfill even a 10th part of the instructions. Obedience is the first step towards a conscious cooperation with the supermundane powers. The first tender bond between us and the masters is woven by our following their commandments. What is hierarchy, if not discipline? Obedience is the first step toward it. Every executed instruction brings you one step closer to the Mahatmas. Any disregard of their decrees moves you away from them. Each instruction applied in life is a step closer toward the great teacher. When the teacher sees that you have fulfilled an instruction, he will give the next one. Only thus is the cooperation with the higher spheres growing. The one who better fulfills the cosmic law will be closer to hierarchy. Disobedience damages the great work of the brotherhood. A co-worker is lost because he has proved to be unsuitable for further tasks. The connection fades if that what is given is not applied. Obedience is the first test for an Agni yogi. Is he really ready to recognize the greater ones above himself, to trust and to follow them unconditionally? Or does he remain entangled in selfishness? Does he continue to go his own small, insignificant and unapproved ways? The true, total devotion to the Masters is proven not by words, but by obedience. You are being tested through difficulties, whether you are reliable and worthy of your Master. Prove your ability for discipleship by obeying the laws of discipleship. Only if you have proven your ability to obey in all the small trials of everyday life, you recommend yourself for higher tasks. Each entering member receives what he demands by his adherence to or repudiation of the said laws. He can rise to the apogee of his opportunity or fall below the level and be placed accordingly by the lodge in some other sphere of experience or activity. In the chain of the hierarchy applies: those who cannot obey are not admitted to serve, and certainly not to rule. Each general has to begin as a common soldier. Every leader and teacher has not only disciples beneath him, but also a hierarch above him whom he himself must obey. The one who does not know the art of obeying will not attain the art of commanding. Every leader must first of all learn to obey. Otherwise, how will he know what is a command and what is fulfillment? This means, above all, he who is unable to rule himself cannot be allowed to rule others. How can we rule cities, nations, planets, rule with God, until we rule ourselves? So, everyone has to start the exercise of obedience with himself. A youth asked a sage to teach him how to be the ruler of a nation. The sage said, "Willingly, but first you must become the ruler of your heart. When you have mastered that kingdom, come to me." Larger power you will only get when you have proved that you are able to establish the rule of the Spirit over yourself. If you cannot be faithful to the vows you have taken to your higher selves, what security can you give to the law that you will remain faithful? If you cannot obey the laws you have sworn to uphold, how can you sit among the lawgivers and hand down just decrees to the executors of those laws?